Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the third of four sessions in our webinar series entitled Bioprocess Workflows That Win. We're excited to share with you today what differentiates Repligen as a solutions provider in the bioprocessing market and the benefits of the impactful solutions that we bring to the market. Before we delve into our topic today on strategic considerations for future-proofing the supply of single-use assemblies, I want to make a short introduction to Repligen. Repligen has a track record of developing, launching, and supporting disruptive technologies, having brought 10 novel technology solutions to the market since 2017. This has resulted in a 5-year growth rate in the company of over 40%. In general, our technology platforms bring efficiency and productivity gains to biomanufacturing. We've developed technology leadership in multiple areas, including upstream intensification with Excel ATF and CrossFlow TFDF, and downstream processing with Opus prepack columns, Affinity ligands and resins, Tangenix flat sheet cassettes, and Spectrum hollow fiber filter modules. We also bring differentiated chromatography and tangential flow systems to the market. In addition, at-line and in-line advanced analytics with Solo VPE and Flow VPX technology that allows for the measurement of and quantitation of the product in solution. And finally, as we'll focus on today, with our total fluid management solutions that enable single-use bioprocessing. Our technology journey has evolved to offer fully integrated solutions. We start with differentiated consumables, as shown here, then add standard and custom flow paths that interface with differentiated scalable chromatography and TFF systems that ultimately include advanced analytical technology for process monitoring and control. This renders a complete integrated technology solution for both upstream and downstream biomanufacturing. In addition, our technologies serve many markets, from traditional modalities, including recombinant proteins and vaccines, to new modalities, including cell and gene therapy and cultivated foods. Before we get started, some quick housekeeping points. This webinar is being recorded for those who are not able to join us today. The on-demand video will be available on our website at repligen.com in about a week. Please ask any questions that you have throughout the presentation. In addition, we always value input from our customers, so we have a poll that is active now and would really appreciate your input. You can ask questions and answer the poll using the Q&A and poll tabs located under the video player. And with that, I'm very excited to hand over to Derek Masser, the Director of Fluid Management Technologies Group, who will walk us through how Repligen is differentiated in the supply of single-use assemblies.
Thank you very much, Christine. And thank you, everybody, for spending a little time today to talk through a topic that I often think is equal parts strategy and philosophy. But we're going to take a look at future-proofing our single use in today's brave new world. So I'd like to start out talking about, I think, the value that we all understand when it comes to single use. I remember years ago when I started working plastics and polymers and biotech, sitting across that conference table and speaking with customers and trying to articulate the value that polymers and plastics bring to a process, what single use can do, and getting that quizzical stare. Why would I change from stainless steel? I can't poke a hole in stainless. And I think between then and now, and at the sake of aging myself, I won't say how long ago that was, but between then and now, I think we all understand the tremendous value that single use can bring to most any bioproduction facility. You look at the upfront capital expenditure of building a facility outright, it's less. You look at the flexibility of that facility when it comes to new modalities, custom, let's say, personalized medicine, contract manufacturing, the flexibility that those facilities offer us in order to change our processes and move from product production to product production. The productivity increases, batch turnover, all of those values, I think we could all sit here and recite. But there's another side to that coin. The other side of that coin is the supply chain security, is the efficacy and the efficiency and the performance values of those single-use flow paths. And I think historically, we as an industry kind of felt like we were a bit bulletproof. And if you look at the last several years, we've had a couple of events that have kind of turned that thought process on its head. COVID in February was a huge shock to the system. It disrupted supply chains everywhere. The Ukraine has been a persisting problem when it comes to the oil markets and those types of products. I mean, even the Suez Canal. Somebody turns a ship sideways and locks down ports for 3 months. Product can't move from to and fro. So we're not quite as resilient against economic and say pandemic catastrophes as what we might have thought. So taking a critical look at how we're designing our single use and how we're deploying it is vitally important in today's new world. So if you look at the historical approach, right, how our industry took a look at solving some of these supply chain issues, they looked at vertical integration, one-stop shop. You come to me, you can buy anything your heart desires. It's all mine. And that has some certain value for sure. That vertical integration gives some security of supply. As an end user, you only have one person you have to talk to when it comes to problems or those types of issues. But you're also painted into a bit of a corner because we would, that single source supply was exactly that. It was their proprietary technology integrated with their proprietary equipment. And you have yourself painted into that corner where that ship goes sideways in the Suez or a pandemic breaks out. You have a hard time getting product. You don't have any wiggle room or any ability to pivot. And I think this is where Repligen is taking a very, very unique approach to vertical integration of that supply chain when it comes to single use. Certainly, we have the controls. We have the transfer ability with regards to our own extrusion. We have our own extruded silicones and our extruded TPEs. We have options when it comes to connectivity, both between flow paths and within flow paths. We've got options for containment, bottles, bags, and the like. And then we fully support that in a bedrock, so to speak, of equipment that is uniquely and purposely designed to ease the deployment of those single-use items. So that's well and good, and it's a definite value that we bring, but that's not all of it. Repligen has also taken the point of being more collaborative, flexible, and agnostic. And what I mean by that is open. We'll work with you in order to identify some of these components, and we're not the only game in town. So looking at integrating perhaps third-party components into that bill of materials for your flow path adds a certain level of flexibility and security that we're taking to market. So for the rest of today's talk, I wanted to kind of break this down into 3 chapters. One, I want to take a look at what we can do for supply chain strength. And I'm going to use some examples, of course, of what Repligen does and why we're so good at it. I also want to take a look at performance, the design, what goes into that flow path. Because who cares if you can get it if it's not ergonomic, if it's not safe, and if you're not eliminating risk of loss. And then I want to kind of tie a bow around it and give everyone an example of a case study that I hope pulls all this together and shows that vertical integration done appropriately offers some wonderfully unique opportunities for innovations that you might not have ever thought possible. So jumping into supply chain security, let's take an example of a mixing bottle. It's a fairly straightforward design, ports going in, ports coming out, pressure transducer, a pressure T, and a simple magnetic pill in the bottom for agitation. It's a wonderful design that Repligen makes all the time. But if you look at it, there are actually 29 components in this assembly. Each one of those components has to be evaluated for, okay, one, is it the best for that particular situation? Are there alternatives? Are there availability concerns? What types of qualification and support documentation are available so that you can prove that interchangeability and be able to provide alternative options? So Repligen is taking the approach of being more holistic in that. We're coupling that open and agnostic approach. Yes, we have very, very valuable equipment and components that provide tremendous service to our customers for all of this. But again, there are alternatives out there. So integrating that into a design, you could have a singular part number, and our processes are set up such that a bill of materials can identify alternatives all within that revision controlled system. So that burden of control is on Repligen as the supplier. You as an end user don't have to worry about it. So looking at a particular example, I'm going to pick on pinch clamps for a moment. They are certainly not the most sexy component out of the entire assembly. It's a pinch clamp. But working with a customer, we're able to identify that as a potential problem point. I think we've all, in the past couple of years, if we're working with single use, you've gotten that phone call where your entire process is about to be delayed because of a pinch clamp. It's not the bag or the bottle or the filter, it's a pinch clamp. So we identify that. Certainly that's part of Repligen's vertical integration. We own a pinch clamp factory. So we have that level of control, but we also have the ability within our system to specify a third-party pinch clamp as an alternative. We certainly can help our customers with the comparative analysis of validation and qualification information to show equivalency and interchangeability, incorporate that into the design, all culminating in the end result of simple availability. Your product will get to you when you want it to. So not only is Repligen's TPE fantastic, it's also compatible with everyone else's TPE. So if you are looking to build redundancy into a bill of materials and not completely overturn the other processes that you might have ongoing in your facility, this is the path to go. Our TPE welds wonderfully to itself, but it also welds to all the other TPEs in the market. This offers a unique opportunity for customers to integrate that supply chain security, again, without having to undo all of the other qualifications of other tubings and replace everything. This can be done adjacent and cooperatively with existing systems. So if we can pivot now a bit to performance. So again, like I said earlier, you might have a fantastic and amazing design that is very, very available, right? You've got security of supply built into it. It's a vertically integrated supply chain. Everything's wonderful. But if you are settling, if your process operators have a hard time deploying it, have a hard time using it, if the risk of failure is higher, who cares if it's available, right? You are potentially putting in harm's way your own operators, or worse yet, the patients and people that we help making therapies that we all make. An example of building performance into a design, I'd like to maybe use a sterile sampling assembly as an example. So there are a lot of different considerations when looking at a sterile sampling assembly, right? The container, is it a bottle, is it a bag? The connectivity to the source, what type of aseptic connector are we welding to it? But for sake of time, I'd like to simplify the conversation and look at two facets. The first being the interconnectivity within the assembly. Each junction could be done one of two ways. One way is zip ties and barbs. It's a very economical method of making connections. With just a few components, you can make 10 billion different permutations. It's a rapid way to pull a design together. It's a very cost-effective way to pull a design together. For those items that are those processes that are maybe a little farther upstream, a little higher value, you could always use silicone overmolding. In that, you have molded junctions, no mechanical connections, and that has its own values. One single flow path, completely smooth, one material, all silicone, so you don't have to qualify multiple materials, and it's integral. There's no mechanical connections. Both options have value, and a properly integrated supplier, like Repligen, can offer you both. The second facet that I'd like to look at is flow control. I don't know of anybody that goes to pull a sample and just welds it on, opens the valve, and lets it flow. There is always flow control within a sampling manifold. You can accomplish this in a couple of ways as well. There are, again, the very simple pinch clamps, more of a guillotine style. And the pinch clamps that Repligen provides are very wonderful, fully qualified, characterized, pressure rated. They can come with colored knobs so that you can coordinate your operating procedures. Say, turn the orange one till full, open the green one. And they bottom out, which means you can't over torque them and damage the tubing. You could also look at something with a little more precision, like the Artisan pinch valves. In this, you've got more of a stainless steel body that clasps around the tubing and provides a very precise gradient control. Those can be automated as well. You could do a fully pneumatic system if you'd like. Now, separately, they're important considerations to take when pulling your assembly design together. But working with a supplier, integrating those two is where the real value comes. You could take those flow control mechanisms, whether it's the pinch clamp, the guillotine clamp, or the gradient clamp, couple that with a silicone overmolded trunk. Now you're able to make your pinch enclosure between samples directly on those junctions, eliminating dead legs. Couple that with the color coding and the potential to automate, you now have an option for sterile sampling that is secure in supply, but also secure to use. So for our last section, I'd like to go through a case study, which I hope ties a nice bow on this and shows some of the capabilities of what a properly vertically integrated organization can do for you. So in this case study, folks come to us where they have rather extravagant filtration manifolds that they're trying to pull together. So in this particular instance, there were 24 filters, 12 filters and 12 pre-filters. The customer is trying to evaluate, do I go with more of a traditional stainless system? Can I make this a single use? How in the world do we handle 24 filters that are all greater than 20 inches long, manifolded together? How do we handle that? How do you control it? And how do we secure the supply chain? And I'm going to show you how. So again, utilizing a properly integrated supply chain, let's say maybe not even properly integrated, but a properly executed vertically integrated supply chain, you can bring some very, very unique value. So we started with the flow path itself, making the system modular, looking at the connectivity between those junctions, identifying alternate connectors such that if one septic connector is no longer available, there are alternatives that can be substituted, and making that less of a kraken, less of an octopus, and more of something that is more easily handleable. So it can be manufactured with accuracy and without error. It can be packaged and irradiated and shipped without error. And it can be opened and deployed in a clean room onto an environment without error. We also integrated controls, process controls. And I bring this up because this is an example of we don't live in a perfect world. And so there are some technologies out there that are extremely proprietary. They bring a fantastic value, but they're, again, in a properly executed, vertically integrated organization, you've got some controls in place, albeit whether it's relationships with those industry technologies, inventory control. There are many ways that we can accomplish that. we were able to integrate pinch valves, more automatic pneumatic pinch valves, to direct flow control. So this was in the event that one filter fouls, it could be automatically and immediately isolated, thus improving the safety for the operators, no blown lines, improving the efficacy and ergonomics of the system so that you don't have to worry about lost product. And there's another value here from a supply chain perspective. These automatic pinch valves are permanently affixed to the platform, which means you don't have to buy them every time. They simply clamp over the tubing. So we were able to eliminate a component from the bill of materials of the flow path itself, lessening the cost of the flow path, increasing the security of supply of the flow path, and integrating that into the platform itself. So with all of that, at the end, great, you've got the controls, you've got the monitoring, you've got the flow path. What do you hang it on? You put a couple of nails in the wall and hang it up like a picture. So what we were able to do is work with the customer to come up with a custom platform. We had a specific footprint that we had to be in. We had a certain layout and height restriction for operator and OSHA requirements. So we were able to design a cabinet and racking system that housed everything. The monitoring systems, the pump, the electric, pneumatics, everything, all self-contained with a simple data connection to the wall controlled by Delta V. That is pretty cool in itself, but there's more. This whole system was made out of polypropylene. So working with a material, a polymer like polypropylene, gives you a lot of advantages. One, polypropylene is very abundant, so you don't have to worry from a supply chain perspective on that. It's fairly secure. Two, fabricating with polypropylene, you can do almost anything. So being able to accommodate geometries and retention features for the filter and the tubing was extremely easy if we were to compare it to doing the same thing in stainless steel. So in the end, our customer received an entire system properly executed through a properly controlled vertical integration supply chain. Full security on the flow path, full security in the deployment of that flow path, and full security in the then operation and final use of that flow path. So to close out, you're probably asking yourself, boy, that sounds very, very fun. How can I get on board? Well, simply reach out to us. We have experts in all four corners of the world, and our design team is standing at the ready. We have, at this point, between flow paths and equipment, well over 6,000 designs. So I certainly would challenge anyone in the audience to throw us a curveball. We definitely enjoyed the challenge. It's a pretty good chance we've seen it already. Thank you, everybody, for your time this afternoon or today. And I'll turn it back over to Christine to moderate the Q&A.
Thank you for your insights, Derek. I think we do have some questions here from the attendees today. So first question, for the sampling example that you spoke about, where a proprietary assembly technology could be utilized, is it possible to build that exact assembly or an alternative assembly as a secondary supplier?
That's a good one. So certainly alternatives can be identified. I think it's part of the promise and the cost of some of those technologies that are very proprietary. They simplify the actual operation, that interface and the extraction of the sample. Say it's a silicone trigger. So don't say any names I'm not supposed to. There's only one place you can go for that. However, the way we can approach it is the connectivity of that sampling device to the source. They use a very common methodology of connecting to a tank. There you can identify alternatives and be able to identify different components. So you wouldn't necessarily exactly replicate the mechanical structure of that proprietary sampling apparatus, but you'll still be able to replicate the functionality of it and bring some of that supply chain security to bear.
So the next question I want to break up into two parts. So the first part is, are the assemblies sterile?
They're both. So it depends again on what customers are looking for. So assemblies, they're all created in the same clean room environment with the same quality standards, the same bioburden and endotoxin trending that are requisite for the industry. But the customers can specify if they want something sterilized or if they want something just, clean assembled.
That's great. And then when we think about assemblies that are sterilized, how do you manage both capacity and redundancy for sterilization?
Another good question. I probably should have put that into the slide deck as we were going through. So I think most everybody on the call should be fairly aware that gamma capacity is at an absolute premium these days. Sterigenics, the major suppliers of those irradiation services are fairly well tapped out when it comes to capacity. The biotech pharmaceutical industry comprises a very, very small percentage of their total volume. Right, they're doing everything from produce and bananas to, class 3 medical devices. What Repligen's been doing is looking at alternative modalities of irradiation, like X-ray. So being able to qualify alternate sources of the similar energies, even the similar bandwidths of energies, such that you can prove equivalency between the two and offer them as an interchangeable alternative to customers that are looking. So, for instance, our sterilization validation, while predicated and based upon gamma, is also going to be including the optional use of directional X-ray.
That's great. Okay, maybe a question here that combines both the single-use assembly with maybe some of the hardware components, right? So can you clarify that the valves are both manual, automated, and mountable? And then how are the automated valves controlled?
Sure. So the artisan style, the precision pinch clamps, the over-the-tube pinch clamps, the DRVs, absolutely come in both variables or variations. They can be manual, where it's a simple turn knob, and there's an exposed post, so there's a visual cue as to whether the pinch is engaged or not. They also come in a pneumatic version, and we've integrated these, obviously in the chromatography skids, the TFF, just about everywhere at this point. And typically it's a Festo block or some other type of pneumatic controller that interfaces with a data source. So it can either be controlled on board with an onboard logic controller, or it could be more of not the Spurgeon, but more of a dummy system, that simply provides the capacity and the capability, and then that is routed into the house Delta V or Delta control system.
That's great. So you had noted, experience with over 6,000 assemblies, right, in our toolbox here at Repligen. So maybe some thoughts on how the single-use assemblies can be used in bioprocessing for new modalities such as viral vectors.
Well, maybe you can tag team this one with me, Christine. So I think, when it comes to, from a scale perspective, and anybody that's got any experience with single use, it can do anything is often the refrain. So, how do you nail that jello to the wall? I think looking at some of those scale issues, sterility issues, there's a lot that can happen and can be under consideration there. So having someone, I think this is the benefit of what Repligen is bringing to bear in it, is that we have expertise from both sides. And I think, Christine, you and I kind of exemplify that now. I'm fairly well versed in single use and how and what's available and where it could be. But but I think you represent that expertise on the other side. Being able to couple that and bring that marriage to bear for our customers is a unique opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? In terms of the whole experience level that exists within the company, right? So being able to apply, as you noted, the single-use technology expertise, right, with the process requirement and the process expertise, right, across our technology platforms. So I think great answer, Derek. The only thing I would add is maybe that with viral vector type processing, some of the new modality bioprocessing, sometimes there's a requirement to keep the system closed, right? Because some sterilization, right, technologies or unit operations that are well entrenched for traditional modalities may not be able to be utilized for new modalities. So that single-use connectivity and the ability to make disposable aseptic connections, right, that are critical to the flow paths and assemblies that you design and implement, becomes very important for that type of processing. Excellent. And maybe the last question here. So a customer is looking to standardize across multiple sites, right? They have multiple manufacturing sites and maybe, hundreds of designs across those different sites and different unit operations. And they might be concerned about losing flexibility in their processing. So any thoughts on how we could help a customer that's in that type of situation?
Yeah, that's another one. Well, let's face it. I think there are a lot of folks out there that have gone through this evolution where you have facilities in all four corners of the globe, and every team kind of went their own different direction and designed the consumables and the single use specifically for what they're trying to do in each locale. And it's one of the values of single use. You can do almost anything with it, right? So it's very malleable and versatile. But now you have a global infrastructure that's got to manage thousands of material numbers that represent the consumables across that entire portfolio of facilities. So a lot of folks have done that, where they're looking at consolidating those designs to say, okay, this is our sampling assembly. This is our harvest kit. This is, these are the assemblies that we're going to standardize upon. And what I usually try to encourage our customers to do is to take one step deeper in granularity and look more at the component level. Because if, an aseptic connector might be a good example, you may say you're going to standardize on a single aseptic connector. Well, should that aseptic connector run into any troubles, you have no alternative. So there, where you are saving cost in managing all these different materials across all the different sites, you may have to pay the piper back a bit in qualifying some of those alternative connectivity methodologies or alternative components so that you've got them in the lexicon within your organization. And now you can do both. You'll be able to standardize on a set library of components. You're leveraging that against a set library of maybe standard designs, but you're still capturing the essence of that control, the security and supply, and being able to leverage that. It's huge.
No, that's really great. Very beneficial insights. Okay, so I think that was the last question from our audience today. So I just want to review where we are in our webinar series. So we're hoping you're able to join us next week, February 23rd. Shelley Para will highlight our innovative and differentiated technologies that are advancing new modality bioprocessing with a focus on case studies in mRNA and viral vector processing. So with that, I want to remind everyone that our two prior webinars are on demand at repligen.com. Today's webinar by Derek will be available in about a week's time, also on our website. And finally, I want to thank you for your time today. We hope you found this webinar to be valuable, and we look forward to following up with you on future opportunities. Thank you.